Welcome to Beyond Wealth, Success Unscripted with Matt Calnan. Discover the personal drive, professional journeys, and business strategies that have made a real impact. It's success from the inside out.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today we're chatting with Betty Ann Smith, an inspiring leader and visionary champion known for cultivating engaged, productive teams and finding creative strategies to optimize organizational efficiency. So first of all, welcome to the show. And do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to be part of this. I think that for me, leadership has always been a big passion ever since I was a little girl. I've always been the one that was taking charge of groups and trying to find solutions for everyone within whatever group I was in at the time. And, for me, in my career, it has continued to build. And I spent about 10 years in new home building, progressively working my way up through sales administration, market intelligence, workflow management, all the way into a point where I felt it was time for a little bit of a shift. So I went over to the private vocational industry, and I did some major projects with very large teams, completely revolutionizing some of the departments, and then moving into a strategy position where I got to use some of the favorite parts of my skills to build new opportunities, be innovative, and create a really engaged team. At this point in time, I've now moved into the public sector, which is a new change for me in a very exciting way. And I'm very excited to, again, bring my skills and my talents forward here as well, and continue that passion for building teams and creating engagement.
Okay, so what are you actively doing right now then in that role?
Yeah, I'm actually the manager for the Center of Wellbeing within the Workland School of Education at the University of Calgary. So what we do is we have a couple different arms in the center. We run practicums for psychoeducational assessments for our MEd and PhD students.
Oh.
So clients can come in and get their children assessed for learning issues or ADHD, and we provide those assessments here. We also have a research arm and an outreach arm. And at this time, we're working together with the dean to build out what the center is going to look like and where we're going in the future. So I'm really excited to be a part of this at this time.
That's awesome. How long has that center been around for?
Oh gosh, longer than I know. I know it's been here
Okay.
for many, many years, but it's
Yeah.
gone through a few different names, and I don't actually know off the top of my head how long it's been
Okay.
here. For quite a while.
And you said there's kind of the two different facets of it, where you've got with the academic side, which is would it be like trials and things like that you're doing with them?
It's more actually just students coming in and practicing assessments.
Oh, I
So we
see.
actually are able to offer a very low cost solution for parents that have children that are struggling in school to come in and get their child assessed. And then we've got a research component where we have different chairs out researching education and what's needed out in the real world, and they can bring that information back to the center. And then we have an outreach portion that we're still kind of building at this point. We're looking at different professional learning series and things like that that we can offer. So that's still in the works. But yeah, very exciting time to be a part of the strategic vision and how they're changing and moving things forward.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting to be able to kind of bridge the gap between something that's fully publicly funded and then something that's fully privately funded, because the cost on something like this on the private side, and I assume that insurance covers a lot of that, but there's a lot of people without insurance. The cost is quite heavy if you're in the fully private world. But if you're in the fully public world, that system in general is very overwhelmed, I think,
Oh, yes.
and slow. And I don't know this particular system, but I know a lot of other areas similar to this in the government. They all typically are quite slow and whatnot. So to be able to bridge that and have maybe that mid tier where it becomes a much more affordable piece, but it's also very beneficial to the students that are going through the program. That must be something that's well received, I assume.
Oh yeah. We've actually had to stop our applications at this point because we've got about a year wait list, and we don't want to have that list become too long. But yeah, for the students as well, it's a huge experience to get real world experience,
Yeah.
work with clients, work with it in a real setting where they're supervised, so it's still safe. We have a registered psychologist that supervises all of those assessments and makes sure
Mhm.
everything is on par. But yeah, it's a great opportunity for them to build that experience, and then go out and start real careers when they're ready.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's great. What was that transition like going from the private sector into the public sector?
It's definitely different. But it's funny because you think about industry changes no matter what. And I think I've had a few of them. I started in transportation way back when I was a
Mhm.
stay-at-home mom for a little bit. I
Yeah.
got into new home building, and then shifted into the education industry and then from private to public. Of course, that's another shift. But I found like there's been a couple times when I've shifted that your transferable skills and who you are doesn't change. And these things, they come with you. They are there for you. And once you kind of get in and learn the new vernacular, the language, the acronyms, acronyms are really big in education. We have
Yeah. Yeah.
degrees in both the private and the public to understand what they are. But once you kind of get your handle on those things, it's the same thing. You're doing the same thing with a different set of components. And so I think once you've done it once, it becomes easier to do again. And I don't know if I'll be in education forever. I am passionate about it. I've always been passionate about working in places where there's some kind of cause. When I worked with new home building, you're building homes for families. And, whether
Yeah.
that was education or public education, you are providing education that's going to change the course of someone's life forever. And that's always been a big proponent of mine. But going from public or private to public, I think specifically, it's a bit of a different to not have to worry about revenue generation and hitting those really high margin numbers, or, trying to get that piece going is a little bit of a shift. I find the pace a little bit different. There's a little more hoops that you have to jump through and more people to work with. And of course, this organization is very, very large. So learning to
Yeah.
navigate just the scale of it is a piece as well.
Yeah. Maybe a little more bureaucracy and red tape than when you're in the private sector, right?
But yeah, a little bit. Although there's that there in that sector as well. So it's
Yeah.
just like
Yeah. For
in
sure.
a
For
different
sure.
form.
Yes. Was
Yeah.
the most difficult job you've had being the stay-at-home mom? Because I
Oh
can't
gosh,
imagine that's
yes, for
easy.
sure. 100%. And I loved it, but I don't think as a society, and we'll get philosophical here, but I don't think as a society that we're really set up to support that stay-at-home parent, whether that's mom or dad. It
Mhm.
can be very isolating. And I think that if we were in bigger community where people were gathering together each other, I think that it makes it a little bit easier. But where we are now, that is not so much a normal option.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I have two kids, and they're both young still. They're 6 and 4. Um, but I remember, the days where I would stay home for whatever reason, if they had daycares closed or something like that. And I have never had more appreciation and respect for people that stay home with kids or caregivers at daycares and day homes and stuff, because that is not easy, and you crave adult interaction of any kind. And so you're right. I think if you don't have that community set up to be able to do that, and some I'll say parents, but I think women are typically the ones doing this where they've got like the mummy groups and stuff. I think some people are much better at that than others. But for men, there's nothing out there. Well,
Yeah.
I shouldn't say there's nothing, but nothing that I ever saw that was out there in that world either. So yes, very challenging role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the
You've had a lot of experience with leading teams and working, quite closely with people. What do you enjoy about doing that?
I enjoy the duplicity of getting an individual to meet their goals while working together to meet the organizational goals. And I think that a good leader looks at both of those. And sometimes those individual goals may end up not aligning with the organizational goals. And I think that if you are a good leader and you really care about your team, that may mean that you are coaching someone into taking a different role at another company and,
Mm.
moving them up in there. And I know some people are going to cringe and have reactions to that. But ultimately, when I lead people, I care about them both in their role and outside of their role. And I want them to be the best they can be. And if you're doing your job and you've got someone who wants to grow and continue to move, they're going to outgrow their position. That will happen. And if you don't have something within your organization, sometimes you need to make a pivot and move into a different organization so you can continue that path. I would even say that sometimes it's wise to make a move outside of your current organization or industry because it's going to grant you more experience, growth, and opportunities. And I think sometimes people have a hard time moving up within an organization when they they were previously seen in a lower role. That can be a hard thing to overcome. So coming in fresh and kind of having that fresh perspective can be a great way to jumpstart your career or kind of give it a little boost.
Yeah. Yeah. A good analogy behind that is if you look at the military, and I'll specifically reference the US military, is that um, when you're promoted in the military, you're not allowed to serve in the same I don't know what they're called, but squadron or whatever it is. You're not allowed to serve when you're now leading other people. And sorry, I don't know all the intricate rules behind it, but it's at different levels that they're not allowed to do that. You actually have to go to a new group because they need that reset or the refresh on the authority behind it. And if you were in a lower role within before, it's sometimes tough to overcome that, definitely.
Agreed. There's like an internal and external piece to it. Like for yourself, sometimes it's hard to put yourself into that authoritative position when you've previously been lower and to be seen that way. So I think it's two factors that I didn't know the military did it that way. So that's interesting.
Mhm. And maybe they don't anymore. It's just I had looked at that in the past and why they had done it and whatnot. So I assume that it's still the case, but they definitely did it historically. So yeah, interesting. Um, what do you think it is that helps you from a skill set or um, whether it's one particular skill or set of skills that helps you in leading people? Because not everybody can lead people. In fact, I think it's a really challenging skill to have.
Yeah, I think that empathy is one of your biggest factors. Those soft skills are going to be what takes you from, a mediocre leader to an excellent leader. Being able to step outside yourself and see things from that individual's perspective, but not losing sight of that. So I think there's also a side to where some people go too far into that, where everything is now about the employee. Well, we still have to step back and look at what the greater good for that organization is. And I think that skill set is tied with another, and I don't know if this is a skill, but whatever category we end up putting this in is fine. But you have to take ego and throw it out the door. So it can't be about authority and you do this because I'm in this title and all of those bits and pieces. The title's there, they know it's there, but ultimately what you're trying to do is get alignment from your team and bring out these pieces from within them and align them with the organization. And that takes that empathy piece, it takes understanding, and it takes you just kind of taking your ego and taking it out. In my mind, I hire good people to do their jobs. I don't need to tell them how. I might need to guide them, help them, coach them, but I don't need to tell them what to do. They're here for a reason. Let's let them do their jobs and move forward. And that's once you kind of get everyone moving that has that ability to do it, you create an unstoppable force.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to dive back to the word that you used with empathy there, and we've done a bunch of podcast shows now, and that's one of the words that comes up the most, I think, is empathy, and especially when it comes to leadership and teams. Um, how does somebody get better at empathy?
Yeah, I think that can be a challenge for different individuals, but there's a lot of different courses that you can take that are out there that would help you. But I think the biggest piece is just, think about when someone's talking, listen, really listen. So don't just sit there and be quiet, but hear and process what they're saying and put yourself there. Imagine how you would feel. Think of all the different emotions that would come up. But the piece that is often missing in leadership is what do we do? So once we've felt it and we know what happens, how do we handle it? So validation is really important, going back and validating that employee. So if they come to you with concern, understanding that it took courage to come forward, that not everyone's good at that, validating that they brought that forward and that their feelings are valid. And even if you don't agree with them, the feelings are valid. And then you can kind of get into the nuance. And I think once people start to feel that you're there for them and you care about them, they feel validated, they start opening up into being aware and able to think about different circumstances. So if you're trying to convince someone that what they're saying needs to be a little bit different, or they need to do things in a different way, starting through that validation and that empathy is a way to do that. And those are just like, you could even write a sticky note on your desk, validate, understand, and then start to converse. And it just kind of repeats through each and every time.
Yeah, and probably the more that goes on, the more it gets ingrained in your brain, and it just becomes more natural at that point then as well, right?
Well, practice, don't just practice at work, practice everywhere, right? Like
Mhm.
we can do it with our spouses, we can do it with our children, we can do it with our friends. And once that keeps going, that just becomes who you are and what you do. And it's very easy then to continue that piece.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes people are really good at empathy at work, but not necessarily as well at home, because you almost kind of turn everything off when you get home, and sometimes that's good, but sometimes that's bad as well, right? So that's maybe the situation that we should be most empathetic in, because it
Yeah.
probably has the biggest impact on our lives, is whether that's a partner or a child or a brother, sister, aunt, uncle, whatnot. Yeah, that's an important approach, but we're probably
Agreed.
less good at that than with employees or whatnot.
Well, it's required to be there. At home, it's like, well, you don't have to do this, but
I
yeah,
can
we
get
should.
away with it. Yeah, yeah. So you said there were some courses and stuff. Have you ever like, are there specific courses that you know of that you could share with people?
Yeah, absolutely. There's one that's coming, what is the name of that now? I think I actually have it listed on my LinkedIn, but oh, there we go. Dale Carnegie, How to
Oh
Communicate
yeah.
with Diplomacy and Tact. That was an exceptional course. It is a bigger one. I do believe they have shorter workshops that you can do as well, but the way that they talk about, and they do talk about different styles of communication when it's important. You know, I tend to be a bit of a direct communicator. I kind of hit to the heart of the issue, but that style doesn't always work. Sometimes I have to go with a softer approach and kind of work my way around the bush, something that's not as
Yeah.
natural to me, but I can do that. And same thing with people who have a softer approach. Well, sometimes you need to communicate directly. And it goes through all of the different nuances of communication, of leadership, and how to be understood, and basically how to work better together. And that would affect both your professional and your personal life. But it
Hmm.
was a great course and I highly recommend it.
Okay. You kind of just gave me the perfect transition into what my next question was. On a similar path here, when we look at organizations today, we've got multi-generation types of employees in there, right? So I'm not talking about ownership, but employees. So you've got Gen Z, you got baby boomers, you got all these different personalities, and not to stereotype them, but different generations are typically like communication style a similar way. Again, not that's not everybody in that, but how do you deal with those different generations and the challenges that presents? Because it's, you can't communicate necessarily the same with all of them. How does that happen, or how are you able to do that?
Well, I think that it's actually much broader than just ages and generational groups. I think that we have a very multicultural community here. So when you have people that are coming in from different countries around the world, they communicate differently as well. So for me, it's much, much bigger than just, age groups. But I
Yeah.
think the most important thing is to learn and develop relationships with the people around you. That's how you're going to learn how they like to be communicated with. And if I'm broad-based brushing, I think our older generation tends to be a little bit more direct, tends to, not take things as personally and just move forward and do the business. Whereas our younger generations, like I've got two teenage boys at home, we're always aware that, we have to be a little bit more gentle, soft, and they're just more aware of the inequities that the world lives in and more aware of the impact. And that's a positive thing that we can all learn from. So it's just a little bit of a nuance there going from the older to younger, but ultimately for me, it's about the individual, and that will span age, it'll span your country of origin, it will span your gender, all of these different pieces, your education. Sometimes you can find differences between people who live rural to urban, your political
Yeah.
status, all of these pieces factor into it. So understanding what you like as an individual and how I can adapt to that, and knowing that they also have a responsibility to come forward and adapt to your style as well. So it's about you both coming together and working
Mhm.
together to create a positive outcome. But
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can only control yourself. So
Have you done some of the personality assessments before, and have you done those with teams, and how is that? You're nodding your head. Anybody that is hearing can't see you nodding, but you are nodding right now. So how has that kind of shaped that communication or those relationships?
so there's definitely an advantage. And I think back to this one we did many, many years ago, and it was a very lighthearted one. It was called Birds of a Feather. And essentially you take this short personality test and you come out with what kind of bird you are. There's many, many different variations of it, but it was a fun one to do. And there was a lot of advantages to understanding how different people communicate, just how to communicate it. Intent is not necessarily coming through the way that you're perceiving it. So that is a great thing. But I do think there's limitations on some of these personality tests as well, as people kind of say, well, I am this is who I am, accepted. Well, no, we're all fluid. We can all change. And often one person will communicate differently to the same person in different settings differently as well. So there's like, if you ended up for some reason working with your wife, you would probably talk to her differently at home as you would at the office. Like, not that I would be a proponent for nepotism, but you know, if that's just an example that can happen.
Yeah.
But I think these labels can be hard as well, because like I said, some people can be stubborn and this is who I am, you adjust to it, this is it. Or it can limit you a little bit. And I think we are all the different labels in different scenarios at different times, based on, you know, even our own emotional or mental well-being, that can affect how we're coming across and these different pieces as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. You know, you can have a certain personality, but we've all had those times where you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, or you've got something really going on in life that is challenging or whatnot, and it does change you, right? It and usually it's not for the better. Usually it's for the worse. I don't know if I have a lot of people that I know that get really stressed and turn into a better person than they were before. But yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. If you were looking at somebody that was coming up into a leadership role, or wanted to learn more about leading teams, and I know you talked about the Dale Carnegie course there again, but what sorts of things should those individuals be looking to do? And this is probably, you know, more even geared to people in their 20s, that are trying to get into those roles. So what should they be doing?
I think that one, learn about yourself first. Know who you are, know how you communicate, know how you react in different situations, understand your triggers, understand how you're coming across. And that can be done in different ways. Like, you can do some introspection on your own. You can go out and ask your colleagues, your friends to give you honest feedback, but make sure you're asking people that are going to give you honest feedback, and not someone who's just like scared to maybe broach some of those negative pieces, you know, and take those pieces back and know that, you know, some of them you might not like and you might want to work on, some of them you might want to keep, and know that like you've got this toolbox and resource list of all of these different pieces that you can enhance or, you know, minimize and work on doing that. And then just get out and start leading. You don't need to be in a leadership position. You don't have to have the title to start leading. So start with, you know, taking a proactive stance and giving your team guides on, you know, a project that's coming up, or, you know, maybe go out and volunteer and do some work out that way and build up your career that way as well. So I think that stepping into that role is a really important piece, and then getting feedback from your team once you start doing it. And even if you don't have that manager or title of any kind, you can start with that leadership position from within, and then you know, get the feedback from the people. Oh, how did I do? How did that come across? Is there something you would suggest I do differently? And get that from a few people, because different people are going to interpret it differently.
Yeah.
But another piece, especially as you're coming into leadership, is to practice self-compassion, because it's hard and you're never going to make everyone happy. Only time anyone's happy is if they're selling ice cream, and that's like it. So ultimately, as a leader, you have to be prepared that some people are not going to like the decisions you make. They're not going to agree with you. And that piece can be really hard to swallow. So make sure that you have that good sense of integrity, knowing who you are, and stick with it, right? Like, be yourself. Don't try and be someone else. You can enhance, like I said, yourself and different skills and pieces that you want to do, but know who you are and act from that authenticity.
Yeah. No, it's great. So what's on the horizon next for you and the organization, and what are you looking at here?
Yeah, I don't know. There's so many opportunities right now. I'm really excited to be a part of the University of Calgary. So at this time, I'm going to build up this team and work forward with the center, but hopefully looking for different positions within the university itself. I'm also considering a few things on the side. I may end up doing an MBA and maybe doing some stuff with, I have a big passion for horses. So I'm considering maybe doing some schooling to do equine massage therapy as a side piece as well, and start a business that way, which I wouldn't do for years, but you know, start building the pieces to it and just kind of have fun with it. I think that one of the great things is because I'm very industry agnostic and I know what I like to do. I like operations and I like my teams and I like to build things and solve complex problems. Well, I'm pretty open to going in different directions and
Yeah.
kind of see what comes for me in the future. So
Oh, that's awesome. Good, good. If people wanted to learn more about what you're doing or reach out and connect with you, where would they go for that?
yeah, my LinkedIn profile would be the best. Just send me a message on there and I will get back to you.
Awesome, awesome. Well, certainly enjoyed having you on the show today, Betty Ann, and wish you the best moving forward. And hopefully that wait list can get lower than a year, and everybody will be happy and yeah, good luck with everything.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Beyond Wealth, Success Unscripted with Matt Calnan. Want to be our next guest? Visit beyondwealthpodcast.ca/guest. See you on the next episode.